we had to send people to work remotely from home. We had to trust them, right? We had to trust them that they know the hours, they know what to do. And I think people are very much empowered by that as well. And I think this is part of being a great leader, is the fact that you can trust your people even when they are not next to you. Hi, good evening. And Chris, thank you so much for the great presentation. It was so fascinating and interesting.
Thank you, Nirit.
Good. So while Gerhard will open his camera and we can see him, I wanted to try and start with something a bit more personal. And we were talking a lot about, mental health and how important it is. So maybe to ask each one of you, what is your best practice of personal well-being? How do you manage the pressure? How do you balance yourself? And Chris, just because you were speaking a lot, maybe I'll ask Stefan to go first.
First of all, it's great to be here. Thanks for having invited me to the conference. It's great to be here, and a big pleasure to be on this panel with great colleagues and have the conversation with you, Nirit. What do we do? I was just thinking through my day, getting to this evening, what we have all done. Try to be very short. First, I think what is the most important thing is I like what I'm doing, and therefore I don't feel that when I have to work a lot, this is a huge stress factor, because I like what I do, and I think we have the right team and the right environment to get our work done. So therefore it feels manageable. And then a bit more specific, I try to sleep enough. I try to do enough sport. In fact, I did sport today for 1.5 hours. And I try to have also time off with my family, with friends, so that I can also distract from work whenever that is possible.
Cool. And Chris, what's yours?
Yes, thanks for sharing that, Stefan. I think for me, being an introvert it takes a lot more energy for me. These kinds of settings or in lots of large groups. And I think what has helped me over the years is, I think even at the time it wasn't called this, but everyone calls it today, it's mindfulness practice. And I try to digest my day at the end of the day and try to think about what I appreciated about the day, different things I'd like to think about for tomorrow. Where did I show up well? Where did I not show up so well? So that I really could understand it and make the next day something better. And it just really released a lot of things that would potentially kind of clutter my mind. And now after doing this for so many years, it just feels like a normal part of my rhythm. If I don't do it, I actually feel less well and less healthy.
So thank you. And so what I can learn is reflection, sport, friends, family, and the opportunity just to disconnect, right? From time to time. It's definitely super important. So Chris, this question is for you, and I think it's very relevant because the pandemic changed the way we work. What is your here to stay aha moment from the pandemic?
Yeah, the pandemic has, I think, upended many routines. But I think in many ways, in something that makes things better for us overall. And for me, it was just recognizing how much I just came into the office and then found myself constantly on the telephone or with the screen, the computer monitor. And now when I come to the office, I'm much more intentional about connecting with people. I go out and I meet people. I'm far less on the computer than I was before. And I think that's a much healthier habit, because when I do need to be on the And I think that opportunity to be in front of and with other people, it disrupts whatever becomes our normal circle, because you run into people into the cafeteria, and you get a chance to then realize, oh, I haven't seen that person in such a long time. But when you have a schedule that's so structured, it can be very easy to get lost in just a smaller group of people. So I think also from a diversity inclusion standpoint, it's helped a lot.
Mhm. So true. And Stefan, how do you see it? What is your aha moment?
What I would say is, when I reflected about this topic, is what I felt during the pandemic, and my feeling is it is an element that stayed, the intentional caring about people has definitely significantly increased. I think originally it was driven by real concerns about health and well-being, but this caring about how is your colleague doing, how is your team doing, how is the stress levels, how can the organization support people throughout their stresses which they have. Some now this has shifted away from the pandemic more into the back into normal environment, but it's definitely a different normal environment. And absolutely, like Chris says, it's definitely much more intentional how you do things. Are you meeting people? Then it's intentional. Are you working from home? It's intentional. And you have a much better focus on how you interact with whom, and you have more flexibility. This is, I believe, one of the elements that is a huge pro. And for some, it is also a challenge, because they need to find their new balance in this flexibility. And supporting our workforce in that is definitely a very strong focus and an important element to do, I believe.
Mhm. Thank you. And Chris, how is your organization addressing the well-being and the health of every person in the organization, actually?
Yeah, being a healthcare company, I think it's very top of mind. It's a part of our culture. We have, even in our own organization, employees that have created, employee patient groups, to just make sure we continue to stay connected to patients. Aren't just outside of the company, but they're really everywhere in our company, in our families, etc. So very much interweaved into our culture is this notion of health and well-being, and then also how we look at it from a sustainability angle. Our human capital sustainability framework very much focuses in on, do we have an organizationally healthy company? Do we have our employees not only focused on their physical health, but also their mental health, as we talked about earlier? And how do we make sure that we look at strategies and initiatives that continue to enable people to feel psychologically safe, to speak up, to feel that they have a forum to be whoever they are when they come into the office? And at the same time, what brings us together is the purpose we have to make a difference again in our work and for patients. And so it's been really holistic in the way that we've tried to tackle it, but it's a complicated topic. And there's many, many more things that we still need to do.
Mhm. Thank you. It is. And Chris, any word of wisdom from your organization, from your experience on that?
I think we need to be able to have the conversations. This isn't something where people should be, not comfortable to find someone that they can speak to, who understands that it's okay that we're not, healthy and well all of the time. And COVID, as Stefan said, helped to introduce this element of, wow, really anybody can get sick in this kind of situation. So what does it require in order for the collective to stay well? Now people make different choices. If they're not feeling well, they're staying home. Where I think, we became an environment where people came to work whether they were sick or not. And I think there's been a lot of value in us actually appreciating that health.
Mhm.
Maybe if I can add on that, it's
Sure.
I believe what Chris says is really the key factor. How to make sure for all employees, actually for everybody, it is an understood factor that health and well-being is important. It's important to talk about it, and it's clear that not everybody is all the time healthy and well. And therefore, we need to find an environment where that becomes normal, that you talk about it, and that you find solutions which help address the overall health and well-being of the organization. Because the worst that can happen to an organization is sick employees. That's the least productive state of an employee, and from an individual employee perspective, the worst individual position to be in anyway. So therefore, it is of fundamental importance, and having this mindset of this is a topic that is there. Senior management talks about it. We have, for instance, given access to a health and well-being app to all our workforce. Make it very explicit that we use it as well. I use it as well, and people use it for different topics. Some for nutrition, some for sport advice, some for um, uh, uh, uh,
Sleeping.
sleep advice. Others use it also for meditation. So there are very individual needs people have to stay healthy, and make it clear that this is part of our being together in an organization. I think is extremely important. Yeah.
Mhm.
Underlying, and I think we shouldn't underestimate that, we still need to continue to make sure we focus on outcome, on production, but that is underlined all by a healthy workforce. Without that, this is not going to work anyway.
Mhm. And I think you both mentioned also the fact that we we now appreciate more the opportunity to just being caring for other people, right? I mean, we do things from home, so we can see other people home. We see the family, we see the pet sometimes. We are somehow less, distinction. And I think it also became more normal just to ask, how are you doing? How is the family doing? And I think such kind of connection and interaction are also very healthy uh, for people overall.
Mhm.
Um, Good, thank you. Um, I We were discussing a lot also the support of technology. I think via pandemic, we all had to start to use a lot of technology and tools that we haven't used before. And Stefan, I really want to ask you, because I know this is part of your passion. How can technology help us? What tools you're using that make your work better,
Yeah.
or your organization?
I think, yeah, I think I was here last year at this conference when we spoke about our digital transformation. We have also written about it in Fast Company how we try to approach it. I think the biggest risk. So first of all, we believe technology is not just an enabler; it's a differentiator. Not just in our business with our clients as a bank, but also for us in HR. Because if we get this better, we are a better workplace for our employees, because you have a better experience, which you generate more insights. The biggest risk I see is that you jump from one fancy app to the next. And I mean, there are many out there which are really cool. They do a lot of good things, but in my view, what is most important is you need to have a plan on how we address this. The way we looked at it, we have clustered it in 4 buckets which we want to address. We want to use technology to generate insights through analytics. So that's basically data-driven insights. And I can share a little example later on why this is so important to look at this in a detailed way. Then we have automation, which leads to more efficiency. That's the simple front-to-back automation versus manual processing of human beings, which frees up capacity that we can do real added value work. The third element we focus on is multi-channel experiences, so that people can use the channel they prefer in the moment they prefer. It is also a live chat, is a chatbot, because many of our queries from employees are very simple. Very simple. A chatbot is much more accurate in responding and more faster, because you always get the same answer, which is the right answer, and a human being who may always do a little tweak, and then you have to fine tune it in the end. And the last is technology helps to connecting platforms, but also connecting people. And on data insights, I think many people tell me, well, HR professionals are relationship driven people, and that is absolutely true. We should never substitute relationships, experiences, and gut feeling with technology or data. But it's not an or, it's an and. And one example where we made a discovery which really changed the way we tackle the topic is we had an issue in having enough diverse hiring happening. And then we look into the channel, we say, okay, 27% of our applications are diverse, gender diverse in this case, and 29% of our hires are gender diverse. So that looks good. So the challenge is the pipeline. That's
Mm-hmm.
the fast conclusion. Now, what you need to know is you have about 1 million applications to hire about 12,000 people. So if I heard that number, and then you go into the absolute numbers, then you realize the pipeline is not the problem, because 27% of 1 million is way more than what we ever hire if we would all hire diverse. Then we broke down the channel, and what we identified was the challenge was in the conversion rate. We interviewed enough diverse talents, but the conversion of non-diverse talents was 1/3 higher than the conversion of diverse talents. So what we then did is an intervention with hiring managers and recruiters to tackle exactly that topic. And what happened now, the delta, 1 year later, the delta in the conversion dropped from 1/3 to below 10%. So what this means is it costs us almost nothing, versus increasing your pipeline costs you millions, because you need to invest in marketing, you need to buy data, you need to do a lot of activities which are
Mm-hmm.
expensive, and it would most likely not have helped us to address the issue. So therefore, generating insights through data analytics, which go beyond the superficial high level analysis, can really add a lot of value to do the right things. And so I think that is where data really can add tremendous value, and digital transformation in general can free up capacity to do what matters most versus repetitive tasks which need to be done but don't add much value.
I totally agree. And I think, we run survey all the time, through our platform. And it really help us, get into the areas that is a bit more, challenging, where people are struggling, where maybe we need some more help for the managers. And it definitely would not replace relationship, but you can really, use the relationship or the professionalism or the advice in the right places. What about when you plan, and you said, you talk a little bit about it, the fact that there are so many cool apps and so many system, but when you want to do a good, digital transformation, how do you plan it? What is
I think that it may sound counterintuitive, because digital is changing so fast. And I know Chris has spoken before also about agile. We are also heavily invested in an agile transformation. But I believe you still need a very good plan. And the plan
Mhm.
needs to be flexible. So it's almost a contradiction in terms. If you don't have a plan, I believe you get lost in the opportunities that are out there. And if you're not flexible enough, you may not follow the developments that are there. So what we did, we started with the why. Why do we do a digital transformation? Why does it matter? Because you also need to bring your workforce along, right? And for us, we have a client promise, which is a substitute of PROS, personalized, relevant, on time, and seamless. You need to digitally transform if you want to live up to your client promise. And we took our client promise also as our employee promise. So HR wants to be the same what UBS wants to be for its client, for its employees. So we want to be personalized, relevant, on time, and seamless. Then we develop a plan based on the 4 pillars I outlined before, and we now action based on this, and take again and again quarterly decisions on where do we invest, where do we want to build. Is it more on the recruiting side where we have issues? Is it more on the experience side where we have issues? Is it more on the data side? Because connecting platforms to generate data and make sense out of it is really a challenge. It's not a given. So this needs time. I think it needs a relentless focus on outcomes, that you really also think about what do we change by implementing all this technology. So what is really changing, and then you need to bring a very solid change management approach into that, because just assuming that your whole workforce will jump on this on its own is probably a little bit the wrong assumption. You need to train people, you need to make them understand why it makes sense, and you need to make them technologically savvy. I believe HR workforce is extremely strong on operational procedures and processes. You think about payroll, about employee record tracking. It's extremely strong on relations, The question is, how strong is it on data savviness? And there is a big investment we try to do in developing data savviness for our people and in creating storytelling. So how can I convince a manager that this area is relevant to focus on to have a positive impact on people and culture? And that can be data supported with insights. And these are the elements we try to bring along on the training, which is, I believe, key.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also need to create something that is very friendly user, right? I mean, I was working on many HRIS system, and I can see, our own system now, and I'm of course a very proud mother of this system. But how it is intuitive, how much it is easy to use, I think has a huge impact on our audience. So for us as HR, but also for the employees and the managers.
I agree, and I'm not sure if you can hear Chris again, but I truly agree with you. And that is, by the way, one of the key challenges, because most of us are probably working in cloud systems.
Mm-hmm.
Some cloud systems are more difficult to tailor to user needs than others. They have a lot of efficiency gains. They have a lot of, the big advantage is you have the data in one place, which is the foundation to do data analytics. The disadvantage of large cloud systems is they are not so user-friendly, some of them. And then to think about how can you create interlayers that your user interface is really creating a positive user experience is definitely a key focus and at the same time a key challenge. This is not easy in large organizations with cloud-based systems to get all that together. And we also have different preferences from different bankers to, if you go to retail banking, investment banking, asset management, technology, lawyers, HR professionals, they may even have different preferences on how the user facing looks like.
So true. But still, I think that at the end, if it work and if you make them, make it sticky, then they'll see the value and they will use it. Cool. Chris, can you try to speak because I couldn't hear you before?
Sure, Nirit, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. We have to be agile, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going to really just piggyback off of what you and Stefan have said, because it really is the expectation of our people. And I think as technology becomes more ubiquitous and everybody knows how to work with their different apps and phones, the expectation for a more consumer-like experience where things are very intuitive and can be handled very easily is a big part of technology adoption. And it is one of those areas that we've been really trying to concentrate on because it's a combination of that experience, but at the same time, stepping away from the way things have been done in the past. And that has been also part of, the effort we've been undergoing. Gerard, hello.
Hey,
Hello.
finally.
Yes, the advances of technology. Sometimes I get feedback that I talk too much. So in that respect, I've done well so far, I think. Yeah.
No, we definitely miss you. And I did, kept one question for you in case you jump in. And we were discussing a lot about the role of the managers during
Yeah.
this transition and
Yeah.
how did it change, in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think when it comes to leaders, or I like the word leaders more than manager, but the weaker ones really fell through. That's true in the financial sector where I work right now, but I hear that from colleagues as well. Weaker in terms of capability to connect, to listen, to show empathy, to be curious, and take small clues like the background, what I see through. We talked about that last time, where you see images, other things that allows you to connect to people, which many people in work environments have been craving for. This capability for human connection. I think that's one thing. The other thing is when you have an unclear or not attractive purpose. So when your organization doesn't stand for something, it's really harder to connect hearts and minds. So I'm in the financing industry, and if you finance, for example, a topic like sustainability, people can relate to that. And over the last 2 years, good leaders have found ways to connect individuals' contributions, small and big, to that bigger objective. So what in many countries the political system is failing on, what in many countries the church is failing on, or other institutions that used to give meaning to people, a good workplace and a good leadership and a clear purpose and a clear product or a set of services that builds on that. Over the last 2 years, leaders who can do that well, they have become the winners. And I always say to people, when 9 out of 10 conversation with your leaders, you end up deflated or without energy, then probably you want to, I don't want to change company, or I want to look for a new leader, because life is too freaking short for that. I hope that answers the question a bit. So it is actually, it has been a test for leadership, and some people thrived in that situation, and some really struggled or failed. Yeah. So for me, it's a proof that leaders who can truly connect to other people, they are worth a lot when uncertain things occur. And this is of course not only COVID. We had a lot of other things to deal with, or still have.
Mm-hmm. So true. Stefan, what do you think about leaders and their changing roles?
I think what is very, I fully agree with Sharon. Leaders make a huge difference. But what was also clear is, and I think that the pandemic was the very most interesting example that really illustrated this. It put a lens on it that magnified the size of it. You need your teams to find solutions, point. There was no way that a senior leader could have found solutions in a meaningful time frame for all the problems we had to deal with. Once of a sudden, everybody has to work from home. Yeah, okay. This is not the question you go through the pyramid, up and down to debate, because we would probably not have found the solutions yet.
Yeah.
But we were not a single day out of business, which means the teams were able to find solutions. Yeah. And that is one of the key learnings we tried to bring into our leadership development, also with Agile, which is really a huge push. You need to have a clear purpose, as Sharon said, a clear vision. What are you standing for? What do you want to achieve? That is basically the guardrails which give you the direction. And within, you empower people that are capable to do things, and you bring the right teams together. So this empowered, decentralized, with crystal clear guardrails and way of operating, I mean, we all know it's the classical Agile approach. That is what is the true differentiator, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's different from before, because before many other organizations were much more hierarchical, because things were more predictable. And this I believe is a huge, it was a huge accelerator in that transformation that was initiated by the pandemic.
Yeah.
Chris, I think you were also talking about it in your presentation, right? About the change in the hierarchy and the fact that the organization is a bit more flexible.
Yeah, right? Absolutely, Nirit. And I think, someone once told me that leaders bring the weather. And I think there's something very true about that.
I like that.
In terms of the perspective of what needs to get done in the future, and how do we overcome some of these different challenges. And for us, we've talked a lot more about leaders, not about telling everybody how exactly to do certain things, because as Stefan and Gerard said, then probably nothing gets done if you go up and down this pyramid. But it's this notion of really understanding, where is it that your team is getting stuck, and how can you help people get unstuck? And where is it that people need guidance because they're not exactly sure how to navigate all of the different stakeholders. And it's a very different role that leaders play that can, again, bring this full potential of every person in the company versus, again, somebody that sits kind of in the hierarchy.
I like that, Chris. And it's also what I found, which was also long before 2 years true, is vulnerability. Talking to the team about those areas where you need their help, because an overplayed strength becomes a weakness, and we all have them. I'm married to a psychologist, so I I get a lot of feedback. But joking aside, it's really engaging. It's empowering to people. And it also shows that you lead by good example, knowing your own strength, but also weaknesses, areas that over the years. So when it comes to the detail of a Gantt chart or preparing technology, that's why I failed miserably. Typically, I've got people around me to help me with that. This time I thought I can do it myself, and you see what happens. But joking aside, it's really empowering for people. It feels so comfortable when you work around leaders who know their own limitations and are prepared to seek help from others and show the vulnerability that they don't have all the answers. It sounds really basic, but it makes a huge difference.
And if I may comment here, I think the fact that we had to send people to work remotely from home, we had to trust them, right? We had to trust them that they know the hours, they know what to do. And I think people are very much empowered by that as well. And I think this is part of being a great leader, is the fact that you can trust your people even when they are not next to you.
And I believe, maybe not to get too long, and of course it depends heavily on which industry you were in, but our industry outperformed in these years. Not that we should be proud about that, because we didn't want that factor to drive our outperformance, but everybody was working from home and the performance was still stellar. Now, many others, of course, they couldn't even work, which was really a tragedy for these people. But I think it's important to say you can trust them, and they do perform. And so this positive reinsurance, it's not just you trust them and they take advantage of it. No, they perform, they do their jobs, they go the extra mile.
I totally agree. I think that we have to finish, and I want to end up with one last question to each one of you. And please try to be short, just because we don't have time. Just an advice for all the HR that are, watching us now or listening to us. We need to prepare ourselves also for the future. So what is like one thing that you would work on yourself and would like to even develop further to be ready for the future? So Chris, I'll start with you, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nirit. I think that's it's a topic when you take a step back, you realize that the world is moving very fast. And one of the things that I've learned and continue to try to balance is this idea of the trapeze swing. And when I ask people to take that leap with me in all the things that I shared, it's really understanding, have I given enough of a safety net that people are willing to take that big, bold move? And, when you try to think about the future, it's actually hard to make sure that safety net is there for every single person to join you on the journey. And that has been an important lesson learned for me. It's always top of mind to make sure that when people make that trapeze swing, that we are there to catch them.
Thank you. It's very true. Gerhard, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. The two quick things about me. I mean, first, I really think that the HR function, which is still a function that's maturing, if you compare to finance, for example, we learned over the last years that it's about human beings and their emotions and their fears, and really basic things that sometimes we have forgotten in human resources, basic human drivers. And if there's one thing I believe in, is that if we connect closer to that, are more curious about also energies like fear or anger. They're all energies that can be translated in something positive for whatever the course your company has. So I think that for me is an important one. And the second is, because we don't know what the world will be, and that's again obvious, but a lot of companies don't do it, is adaptability. Invest in your capability to adjust rather than think that you can predict the future. And that again comes to a very basic human thing, is give people space, let creativity play out, create an environment where really people can be the best they can be. And that gives also another lens to the inclusion part of diversity. But these would be my my suggestions. Yeah.
Thank you. And last but not least, Stefan.
As we are already over time, I try to be very, very short. I think what I realize when I'm at my best, when can I be the best leader I can be, is typically when I'm in peace with myself. Which doesn't mean I have everything under control, but I'm in peace with myself. So I'm not angry about me, others. And now finding out what is driving peace and what is driving my peace away. And then trying to get more into the state where I'm at peace with myself. That to me is what I want to continue to focus on, because we all have our bad moments, and thereafter we know they were bad. So we should try to stay away from it, that we don't have to remember ourselves.
So true. Okay, so thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting all of you and talking to you and learning from your experience. And back to you, Mihai.